evening. Welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. The Electoral College cast their votes for the next president today. Although many electors in battleground states are casting votes for Biden, the battle for the presidency continues as GOP electors in those contested states cast their own votes for President Trump. At least 2 U.S. government departments have been hacked through an internet software firm. It's used by all 5 branches of the military. Also among the companies who use the firm is Dominion Voting Systems, raising concerns about election security. Results of a forensic audit shows Dominion Voting Systems could be designed to create fraud. Some argue election results Dominion generated across the country should now be questioned. Sydney Powell says people who deny voter fraud exists are either lying or willfully blind. She says a witness claims there was voter fraud back in 2016, and those who knew about it did nothing to change it. And a nonpartisan legal group is demanding that election-related evidence be preserved. It's in response to an audit that revealed a large error rate in Michigan's vote counting. President Trump announces that Attorney General William Barr is stepping down from his position. Trump made the announcement over Twitter and attached a copy of Barr's letter of resignation. In the tweet, the president said he had just finished a meeting with Barr at the White House. He said that Barr will be leaving just before Christmas, adding that Deputy Attorney General Jeff Rosen will become the acting Attorney General. Trump attached Barr's resignation letter. In it, Barr praised Trump and his administration's achievements, saying that few could weather the attacks Trump had had to deal with. The letter also detailed that in the meeting, Barr had updated Trump on the DOJ's investigations into election fraud. Despite leaving, Barr said the allegations will continue to be pursued. The reasons for Barr's resignation are currently unknown. And some say the forensic audit of Dominion calls into question the results of the election in all states that use the voting system. The data firm that published the report says Dominion is intentionally designed to influence election results.
Dominion voting machines are designed to create fraud and influence elections. That's according to forensic audit results in Michigan. Data firm Allied Security Operations Group investigated 22 Dominion machines in Michigan's Antrim County, which reportedly flipped thousands of Trump votes for Biden on election day. A Michigan judge on Monday agreed to a request to publish the report. Author of the report and cybersecurity expert Russell Ramsland wrote, "The results of the Antrim County 2020 election are not certifiable. This is a result of machine or software error, not human error." The report says the system intentionally generated an enormously high number of ballot errors. The electronic ballots are then transferred for adjudication, and that's a step when poll workers decide who the vote goes to. But the report alleges that the adjudication process was done with no oversight and no audit trail. The report says the Federal Election Commission allows an error rate of 1 in 250,000 ballots, but the audit team observed an error rate in Antrim County of over 68%. The group says all adjudication entries for the 2020 election are missing, even though records from previous years are intact.
This is a clear indication that somebody was pursuing election fraud in this case. And so the whole idea that they could certify Antrim County is unbelievable.
Poll challenger and former Michigan Senator Patrick Hoback says the evidence should cast doubt on the results of all counties and states using Dominion.
Bottom line is this same system, this Dominion system, is used in 47 out of 83 counties in the state of Michigan. So this immediately calls into question the validity of all the results in all those other counties inside of Michigan beyond Antrim County. And plus, when you understand that this same system is used in 28 out of 50 states, including most of the battleground states, the whole election nationwide is brought into question just on the results of this Antrim County analysis.
The audit is part of the lawsuit by a voter against Antrim County. Michigan's Attorney General wrote in a post that lawyers in Michigan should not file, quote, unjust or frivolous actions or mislead the court. She says the spate of Trump lawsuits in our state violates state bar rules.
If the Attorney General were actually honoring her oath of office, he would be investigating and prosecuting the perpetrators of this election fraud. But We know that instead of doing that, the Attorney General actually threatened the plaintiff attorney in this case in Antrim County with legal action. This is an example of thugocracy. This is banana Republican action. It's not a nation of laws, and people need to start standing up.
Michigan State GOP leaders on Monday said again that they won't interfere with electors or overturn votes.
We've got a Republican Senate, we've got a Republican House. Yet the leadership of both the House and the Senate is already saying that there is no evidence of election fraud. They obviously are not looking, if they are not seeing evidence of widespread, significant election fraud in this state. And they need to be held accountable.
A Michigan Assistant Attorney General said on Monday that the report was inaccurate, incomplete, and misleading. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Parts of the forensic results are redacted. Assistant Attorney General Eric Kirk says that's because it belongs to source code proprietary to Dominion. Meanwhile, Attorney Sidney Powell on Sunday alerted the Supreme Court to the forensic results as new evidence filed in her Michigan lawsuit. She's calling on the court to intervene in her cases challenging the integrity and outcome of the 2020 elections in 4 states. And in a 4-3 decision, Wisconsin's Supreme Court tossed out the Trump campaign's lawsuit. It sought to invalidate more than 220,000 ballots in Dane and Milwaukee counties. But earlier, the court awarded a win for the Republican Party. NTV's Christina Kim reports.
The court rejected the Trump campaign's case because they say they waited too long to bring these claims. It also said it would not issue a blanket invalidation of indefinitely confined voters in Dane County and Milwaukee County. But earlier in the day, they ruled in favor of Wisconsin's GOP in another case. They said local election officials were wrong in saying all voters could claim the status of indefinitely confined due to the pandemic. They added the presence of a pandemic in and of itself does not entitle all electors in Wisconsin to obtain an absentee ballot. Under Wisconsin's election laws, anyone who claims to be indefinitely confined because of age, illness, infirmity, or disability can bypass photo ID and automatically receive a ballot. According to the Milwaukee Journal, 215,000 people claimed the status this fall, a near 4-fold increase from the last presidential election. After Governor Evers issued a stay-at-home order, Dane County Clerk Scott McDonald sent an email on March 25th to the municipal clerks in his county. He told them, "I am declaring all Dane County voters may indicate as needed that they are indefinitely confined due to illness," saying that it would make it easier for voters to vote by mail. He urged all voters who request a ballot and have trouble presenting valid ID to indicate that they are indefinitely confined. Wisconsin Supreme Court now says this is not allowed. A county clerk may not declare that any elector is indefinitely confined due to a pandemic. This must be determined by the individual. But the court added that tossing out ballots cast under the indefinitely confined status would have to be determined on a case-by-case basis. Christina Kim, NTD News.
In an interview with American thought leaders, lawyer Sidney Powell said people are either lying or willfully blind when they say there's no evidence of election fraud. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on that interview and new evidence Powell claims to have.
A number of media outlets have called the claims made in this year's election lawsuits either baseless, unfounded, or non-existent. But Sidney Powell, a former federal lawyer spearheading multiple election lawsuits, says anyone who denies that the evidence exists is one of 3 things.
There's people who say there's no evidence just are lying through their teeth, or they're deliberately ignorant or willfully blind to the truth. And frankly, they're part of the problem and know damn well that all this happened and may have even instigated it, benefited from it, paid for it, encouraged it.
That was during her interview with American thought leaders, but the courts have dismissed several of these cases, including the recent case filed by Texas. The highest court in the land dismissed it, saying that the state had no standing. In other words, the court wasn't satisfied with their proof of injury. Powell says her lawsuits aren't going to have that issue. On top of that, she says new evidence is coming in, including information that suggests that voter fraud could be a potentially decades-long black market trade.
It's the first time it's happened on this scale, but I've been given a massive quantity of data from California in 2016 that shows it happened there, that Clinton did the same thing to Bernie Sanders there. And I have a witness who told me that they informed Bernie Sanders of all of it, and instead of outing it, he sold out. So the moneyed interests, the political interests, the global power elites have been doing this all around the world, wherever they wanted to, for at least 15 or 20 years.
We contacted the office of Senator Bernie Sanders and the Clinton Foundation for comment, but they didn't get back to us before airtime. Powell notified the Supreme Court of new evidence related to her Michigan election lawsuit over the weekend. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Almost 4,000 non-citizens allegedly voted in the November election in Nevada. This is according to an examination of the state's driver's license records.
The Nevada Republican Party announced on Saturday, December 12th, that it found evidence of more than 3,900 non-citizens voting in the 2020 Nevada election. Jesse Camsell is an expert associated with the Republican Party in an election-related lawsuit. In a sworn affidavit filed with the Nevada court, he explains that he matched non-citizen records from the Department of Motor Vehicles, or DMV, with the state's registered voter list. He found that more than 6,000 non-citizens are registered to vote, and almost 4,000 have already voted in this year's general election. The Nevada GOP subpoenaed the Nevada DMV earlier this month. In Nevada, legal aliens such as green card holders and illegal aliens can obtain driver's licenses and ID cards. More than 110,000 non-citizens hold driver's licenses, according to the DMV file provided to the GOP. Nevada also mandates that the DMV automatically register all voters who apply for driver's licenses, according to a 2019 law. According to the affidavit, 3,987 ballots cast by non-citizens appear to have been counted. A total of 4,546 non-citizens appear to have attempted to vote. After the discovery, the Nevada GOP urged the state attorney general to investigate voter fraud.
An internet software firm used by all 5 branches of the U.S. military, nearly all Fortune 500 companies, has been hacked. Also among the companies that use the compromised firm is Dominion Voting Systems. And this is raising concerns about election security. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
SolarWinds, an American company that develops software to help businesses manage their networks and computer systems, has been the victim of hacking for months. And according to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, it's still being exploited by malicious actors. CISA issued an emergency directive Sunday night, instructing all federal agencies to check their networks for signs of compromise and to disconnect SolarWinds products immediately. SolarWinds is used by several departments of the U.S. government, 2 of which have reportedly been compromised. It's reported that the hackers have gained access to the U.S. Commerce Department and the Treasury Department through the software. According to FireEye, a cybersecurity firm, the hackers gained access by inserting malware into software updates for SolarWinds Orion software. FireEye first raised the alarm about the hacking on December 8th. And another company that uses the compromised software has been the subject of concern. According to a Dominion Voting Systems webpage, Dominion uses SolarWinds software. Dominion has not yet issued a statement on whether it has been affected by the hacking or not, but some people are raising concerns about what this means for the security of the election, and asking how the former director of CISA, Chris Krebs, could issue a statement claiming the November 3rd election was the most secure in U.S. history, given that hacking was taking place. Tracy Beans, editor-in-chief of Uncover DC Media, shared screenshots of CISA's statement and the news of the hacking and questioned, "Hey Chris Krebs, dare to answer how U.S. government systems were penetrated here, but somehow this election was the most secure in history. Did you know about this in advance? Is Dominion a customer?" General Michael Flynn retweeted Beans and called the hacking a grave national security threat. He said this means U.S. SolarWinds product is 100% compromised across the USG, likely China with backdoors to every department, agency, and activity in the USG. Flynn also urged President Donald Trump to demand answers immediately. CISA asked all agencies operating SolarWinds products to provide them a security report by 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday the 14th. This means we should know if any other companies or agencies have been compromised in the upcoming days. Grace Coulter, NTD News, New York.
Swing states should preserve their election evidence. That's what a nonpartisan legal group is demanding after a forensic audit of Dominion systems in one county found a 68% error rate and indications of potential fraud.
The election integrity watchdog cited what they called a bombshell report of a forensic audit into a group of voting machines in Antrim County, Michigan. The report found a huge amount of errors in recording votes. The legal group also said investigators believe the error rate was intentionally created to warrant a mass inspection of ballots, risking the possibility of them being altered. On December 1st, the Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson issued a memo instructing election clerks that electronic poll book files must be deleted from all laptops and flash drives. Director of the Amistad Project, Phil Klein, said, quote, "This joins with the Michigan Attorney General threatening legislators with criminal investigation and possible prosecution if they disagree with her, and the Michigan governor and other officials shutting down the People's House and preventing them from gathering today to perform their constitutional duty," unquote. The Amistad Project is now demanding that evidence is protected from being destroyed or spoiled by executive officials. They're asking judges in all swing states to issue emergency orders preventing state and local officials from destroying such evidence. Reporting by Don Tran and TD News.
As in line.
The 538 electors met to cast their
Cake bites
Advertisement.
snack cake with 3 layers and 3 delicious cakes in each package. And it got me
Skip ads, button.
there were 3 of me too. Having 3 of us has made life so much easier. So much easier. Mom, Daddy hit me! Your turn. Don't look at me. I handled that mess in aisle 2. Oh, fine. But you two entertain our mother-in-law tomorrow. I'm going out. Fine, fine. Cake bites. 3 times the deliciousness all in one bite. Get your favorite flavor today. Wait, going out where?
Advertisement. Skip ad, button.
Lo más que me recuerda a Medalla del Coquí en Puerto Rico es mi pueblo, Mayagüez.
Sentí como que estuviese en casa.
their votes for the next president of the United States. But there's pushback from Republican electors in battleground states. NTD's Christina Kim brings us updates.
The December 14th meeting is when the electors cast their votes. Most of the 538 electors have been voting according to predictions. Electors in key battleground states like Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania have cast their ballots for Joe Biden. Before this becomes official, these votes need to be counted during the joint session of Congress, when the House of Representatives and Senate meet on January 6th. This process will be overseen by Vice President Mike Pence, part of his role as Senate President. As Democrat electors in contested states cast their votes, Republican electors in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, and Michigan all said they cast procedural votes for President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence. This comes as their states' formally appointed Democratic electors voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. For example, Pennsylvania's GOP issued a statement saying they cast a conditional vote for Trump and Pence at the request of the Trump campaign. They said it was to preserve any legal claims that may be preserved going forward, and clarified that it is in no way an effort to usurp or contest the will of the Pennsylvania voters. And as Georgia's electors awarded the state 16 votes to Biden, 6 GOP electors in Georgia cast ballots for President Trump and said the contest of the election is ongoing. David Schaefer, the chairman of the Georgia Republican Party, said they did this because the president's lawsuit contesting the Georgia election is still pending. When GOP electors cast their votes for the president, this sets up the potential for dueling electors. This is when one candidate is certified by the governor and the other by the legislature. If this deadlock occurs, the Supreme Court would have to resolve the election. White House advisor Stephen Miller told Fox News that alternate groups of electors were being chosen in several states, claiming that it would lead to Trump's re-election. He said the only deadline in the Constitution was January 20th, and there's plenty of time to overturn the election before then. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Hawaii is the last remaining state to cast its 4 electoral votes. The state's electors will meet at 7 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. And 2 senators have said they may object to the electoral votes for president in January. 3 representatives are planning to file objections. An objection can be filed, but it must be endorsed by at least 1 senator and 1 representative. NTV's Kevin Hogan has more on how Congress selects the president.
Congress is the body that determines who will be the next president, not the court system, according to Representative Mo Brooks from Alabama. Brooks explains Congress must first accept or reject the state submission of Electoral College votes. Congress convenes on January 6th at 1 p.m. to receive the state's electoral votes. The Senate President shall call for any objections, which must be signed at least by 1 senator and 1 representative. So far, Republican Senators Ron Johnson of Wisconsin and Rand Paul of Kentucky have said they may object. 3 reps are planning to file objections. Those are Rep. Mo Brooks, Rep-elect Barry Moore from Alabama, and Rep-elect Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia. After an objection, the Senate and House will separate and each will decide whether to accept or reject a state's objected electoral votes. If both chambers reject the state's votes, they will not be counted. Then if neither candidate has a majority, Congress votes on and elects the next president and VP. Each state's delegation of representatives has 1 vote. A candidate must receive a majority of delegation votes, as in 26 out of 50, to become the president. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
House Republicans say they're concerned about the Chinese Communist Party's influence on Congress. So they're calling on the FBI to hold a briefing related to an alleged Chinese spy. She apparently had a romantic relationship with a congressman. A report by Axios alleges a suspected Chinese spy named Fang Fang, also known as Christine Fang, was romantically involved with a Democratic congressman. Members of the Republican Oversight Committee say any number of elected officials could be compromised by Chinese spies without even knowing it. They've asked the FBI to hold a briefing about that report to get a better idea of the regime's influence on the U.S. government and what the agency is doing to investigate these problems. And questions surround Georgia's presidential election integrity. 2 senators are urging the Secretary of State to release a list of registered voters so any potential illegal ballots can be easily spotted. Many expect Republicans will keep a close eye on the Senate runoff counts. Former Republican House Speaker Newt Gingrich told American thought leaders that he still expects to see illegal votes cast, but not on the same scale as during the presidential race.
A balance of power is in the hands of Georgia voters. Many have called this state's Senate runoffs the most important factor to the future of America. The 2 candidates represent very different approaches to public policy on healthcare, immigration, schooling, and law enforcement. President Trump has already said at a Georgia rally that his team will be zoned in on Georgia's vote counting.
These 2 runoffs are probably the most important runoffs in American history. They have the potential to change the whole direction of the country, because if we win, Biden would have to be much more moderate. And if they can elect Ossoff and Warnock, Biden will have a signal to be very radical.
And after witness upon witness testified about potential election fraud, it's expected that Georgians will take the task of poll monitoring even more seriously during the runoff count than during the presidential count.
There will still be some cheating, but I think that the amount of time and effort being put into policing it is dramatically bigger than it was in November.
And a Trump team lawsuit that addresses potential fraud was appealed to the Georgia Supreme Court. It asked them to hear the case before the December 14th Electoral College vote. The court declined under the pretense that they lacked jurisdiction to consider the petition. Gingrich also told Jan Jekielek that he's disappointed in those trying to cover up potential election fraud to begin with.
To have a security camera show you a video which seems so clear a case of theft, and then have every major media try to avoid covering it. I mean, to me, it is a betrayal of the country by our elite interest groups and these billionaires in Silicon Valley that I wouldn't have thought possible 10 years ago.
And some of those elite interest groups he mentioned now seem to be dedicating millions to flip the Senate with campaign donations. According to a 538 report, Ossoff and Warnock have raised the majority of their campaign funding from California and New York. Through Democrat fundraising platform Act Blue, Warnock and Ossoff together have won just $4.3 million from Georgia. Compare that to $25.8 million from California and $10.6 million from New York. Reporting by Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The Pentagon is appointing 8 new members to the Defense Policy Board. Among them is Newt Gingrich. Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller announced the appointment. This appointment comes after the Trump administration fired 11 high-ranking members from the Defense Policy Board in November. And Californians protested against election fraud over the weekend. Here are our NTD reporters with more on the story.
In Sacramento, people protested for election integrity. Their gathering came the weekend before the Electoral College votes. Their hopes were the same, that the government would hear them.
We're a little bit disconcerted about the way things are going right now.
In order to be here, we couldn't always be here. That's why we've ramped up production to get the nation's most trusted brand back in your hands, and to make sure you can find us here. Purell.
Would hear them.
We're a little bit disconcerted about the way things are going right now. We're hoping that somebody somewhere will be able to take this up and come out with a just conclusion, because we really believe that Trump did win by a landslide.
Well, I think some of the shenanigans, I guess, during some of the states' election process, where some of the non-legislative folks made changes to the election process, that's illegal.
The protesters spoke of voting irregularities like receiving multiple ballots, dead people voting, and other unprecedented behavior.
The presidential election got called at 8:01. There were still people standing in line before they haven't voted. If they count all the votes, it's fair, and we lost, we lost. We deal with it. But when you feel that you lost because your vote wasn't counted, that leaves an empty feeling. And that makes you wonder what happened. Why can't we fix that? So to anybody who's going to vote for the electoral votes right now, I say take a second look, make sure there's no fraud before you stamp your signature of approval on that, because we, the people of California, deserve that much respect.
In Los Angeles, the Asian community said they also found this year's election strange.
My parents are U.S. citizens, but never registered to vote. This year is very strange. They not only received mail-in ballots, but each got 2. This is obviously rampant fraud. And not just my family members, my colleagues at work, a couple never registered, but also received mail-in ballots. Another friend registered and again received 2 ballots. Election fraud has been around for a long time, but now it has turned into a system from top to bottom. This has become so deep and far-reaching. If we don't step up to put an end to it now, this republic will cease to exist.
Both women emigrated from communist China. They never had a chance to make their voices publicly heard. Now they are not only pursuing freedom and the American dream, but also protecting their new home from the danger they left behind. Reporting by Eileen Ng and Ada Lee, NTD News, California.
In a small city in Washington state, people gathered to address election irregularities and the state's lockdown rules. Here, the city council unanimously decided not to follow the governor's ban on indoor dining.
Among the crowd in Mossy Rock, Washington, were a number of members from the Washington 3%, a constitutional conservative nonprofit organization. According to them, the election needs further investigation.
We have multiple counties in Washington state that reported a voter turnout higher than the actual amount of registered voters. That's eyebrow raising. It doesn't necessarily mean that we had a stolen election, but it's abnormal and it needs to be looked at.
Another member of the event criticized YouTube's new rule, which removes content that alleges voter fraud might have taken place in the 2020 election.
That's taken away our First Amendment rights. I came from a communist country. I'm not going to stop speaking up, for this country is now my country. I have to protect it. Where am I going to go after that?
Last month, Mossy Rock City Council voted unanimously to not adhere to the governor's ban on indoor dining. Instead, the city opened up its restaurants. We asked the city's mayor what he thinks of the governor's ban.
We feel that he is not following the constitutional of Washington state and the federal. So with that, last month we passed an ordinance within the city. And I believe we are the first city in the state of Washington to do that.
Although the participants at the event were clearly frustrated about election irregularities, social media censorship, and arbitrary lockdown measures, the event remained peaceful.
And ahead, a gunman opens fire outside of a New York City cathedral after a choir performance. Police fatally shoot him. No others are believed to be injured. And also coming up, businesses linked to the governor of California reportedly received millions in loans aimed at pandemic relief. The controversy adds weight to the growing recall effort.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? We're spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years? Even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year. Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
A gunman opened fire on the steps of New York City's Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine. An outdoor choir had just performed there. Police say they fatally shot him. Miraculously, no one besides the gunman was shot.
Pictures captured by a Reuters photographer show a gunman who opened fire during an outdoor choir performance Sunday on the steps of New York City's Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine. The suspect was himself shot and wounded by police. A New York City Police Department spokesman said the shooter had fired on police, but no officers or bystanders were believed to have been injured. The NYPD spokesman also said the suspect, who was not identified, was rushed to a local hospital in critical condition. The Reuters photographer at the scene captured people running and taking cover as the shooting occurred outside the landmark cathedral on Manhattan's Upper West Side. Only about a dozen bystanders were present at the time of the gunfire, which the Reuters photographer said erupted 15 or 20 minutes after a crowd of more than 200 people had gathered for the concert. The photographs of the gunman showed him wearing what appeared to be a face mask emblazoned with the flag of the Dominican Republic, as he stood wielding 2 pistols, one in each hand, while also carrying a large backpack.